Letter 38 to the Honourable Daines Barrington. Forte puer, comitum seductus ab agmine fido, dexerat equis adest, et adest responderat echo. Hic stupet, utque asium partes divisit in omnis, voce veni clamat magna, vocat illa vocantem. Reader's note. A boy, separated from his band of friends, had called out, "Is anyone here?" To which had come the echo in reply. Amazed, looking all round, the boy called out loudly, "Come!" His call is answered by the call of the echo. Translation by Peter Yearsley. End reader's note. Selborne, February 12th, 1778. Dear Sir, in a district so diversified as this, so full of hollow vales and hanging woods, it is no wonder that echoes should abound. Many we have discovered that return the cry of a pack of dogs, the notes of a hunting horn, a tunnable ring of bells, or the melody of birds, very agreeably. But we were still at a loss for a polysyllabical articulate echo, till a young gentleman, who had parted from his company in a summer evening walk, and was calling after them, stumbled upon a very curious one in a spot where it might least be expected. At first he was much surprised, and could not be persuaded but that he was mocked by some boy. But, repeating his trials in several languages, and finding his respondent to be a very adroit polyglot, he then discerned the deception. This echo in an evening before rural noises cease would repeat 10 syllables most articulately and distinctly, especially if quick dactyls were chosen. The last syllables of titiri tu patulae recumbens. Reader's note. Utiterus reclining. Translation John Greenbow. End note. Were as audibly and intelligibly returned as the first. And there is no doubt, could trial have been made, but that at midnight, when the air is very elastic, and a dead stillness prevails, 1 or 2 syllables more might have been obtained. But the distance rendered so late an experiment very inconvenient. Quick dactyls, we observed, succeeded best, for when we came to try its powers in slow, heavy, embarrassed spondees of the same number of syllables, monstrum horrendum inform ingens, we could perceive a return but of 4 or 5. Reader's note. A horrible monster, deformed, huge. From the Aeneid. End note. All echoes have some one place to which they are returned stronger and more distinct than to any other, and that is always the place that lies at right angles with the object of repercussion, and is not too near nor too far off. Buildings or naked rocks re-echo much more articulately than hanging wood or vales, because in the latter the voice is, as it were, entangled, and embarrassed in the covert, and weakened in the rebound. The true object of this echo, as we found by various experiments, is the stone-built, tiled hop-kiln in Galley Lane, which measures in front 40 feet, and from the ground to the eaves 12 feet. The true centrum phonicum, or just distance, is one particular spot in the Kingsfield, in the path to Nor Hill, on the very brink of the steep balk above the hollow cartway. In this case there is no choice of distance, but the path, by mere contingency, happens to be the lucky, the identical spot, because the ground rises or falls so immediately, if the speaker either retires or advances, that his mouth would at once be above or below the object. We measured this polysyllabical echo with great exactness, and found the distance to fall very short of Dr. Plott's rule for distinct articulation, for the doctor, in his History of Oxfordshire, allows 120 feet for the return of each syllable distinctly. Hence this echo, which gives 10 distinct syllables, ought to measure 400 yards, or 120 feet to each syllable, whereas our distance is only 258 yards, or near 75 feet, to each syllable. Thus our measure falls short of the doctor's, as 5 to 8. But then it must be acknowledged that this candid philosopher was convinced afterwards that some latitude must be admitted of in the distance of echoes according to time and place. When experiments of this sort are making, it should always be remembered that weather and the time of day have a vast influence on an echo, for a dull, heavy, moist air deadens and clogs the sound, and hot sunshine renders the air thin and weak, and deprives it of all its springiness, and a ruffling wind quite defeats the whole. In a still, clear, dewy evening the air is most elastic, and perhaps the later the hour the more so. Echo has always been so amusing to the imagination that the poets have personified her, and in their hands she has been the occasion of many a beautiful fiction. Nor need the gravest man be ashamed to appear taken with such a phenomenon, since it may become the subject of philosophical or mathematical inquiries. One should have imagined that echoes, if not entertaining, must at least have been harmless and inoffensive. Yet Virgil advances a strange notion that they are injurious to bees, after enumerating some probable and reasonable annoyances, such as prudent owners would wish far removed from their bee-gardens. He adds, aut ubi concava pulsu, saxa sonant vocisque offensa resultat image. Reader's note. Or when the arched rocks reverberate when struck, and the sound hurled back resounds as an echo. Translation Peter Yearsley. End note. This wild and fanciful assertion will hardly be admitted by the philosophers of these days. Especially as they all now seem agreed that insects are not furnished with any organs of hearing at all. But if it should be urged that though they cannot hear, yet perhaps they may feel the repercussion of sounds, I grant it is possible they may. Yet that these impressions are distasteful or hurtful I deny, because bees, in good summers, thrive well in my outlet, where the echoes are very strong. For this village is another Anatoth, a place of responses or echoes. Besides, it does not appear from experiment that bees are in any way capable of being affected by sounds, for I have often tried my own with a large speaking trumpet held close to their hives, and with such an exertion of voice as would have hailed a ship at the distance of a mile, and still these insects pursued their various employments undisturbed, and without showing the least sensibility or resentment. Some time since its discovery, this echo is become totally silent, though the object or hop-kiln remains. Nor is there any mystery in this defect, for the field between is planted as a hop-garden, and the voice of the speaker is totally absorbed and lost among the poles and entangled foliage of the hops. And when the poles are removed in autumn, the disappointment is the same, because a tall, quick-set hedge, nurtured up for the purpose of shelter to the hop-ground, entirely interrupts the impulse and repercussion of the voice, so that till those obstructions are removed, no more of its garrulity can be expected. Should any gentleman of fortune think an echo in his park or outlet a pleasing incident, he might build one at little or no expense. For whenever he had occasion for a new barn, stable, dog-kennel, or the like structure, it would be only needful to erect this building on the gentle declivity of a hill, with a like rising opposite to it, at a few 100 yards distance. And perhaps success might be the easier ensured, could some canal, lake, or stream intervene. From a seat at the centrum phonicum, he and his friends might amuse themselves sometimes of an evening with the prattle of this loquacious nymph, of whose complacency and decent reserve more may be said than can with truth of every individual of her sex, since she is quae nec reticere loquenti, nec prior ipsa loqui didicit resonabilis echo. Reader's note. Responsive echo, who learned neither to be silent when another speaks, nor herself to be the first to speak. Translation Peter Yearsley. End note. I am, etc. P.S. The classic reader will, I trust, pardon the following lovely quotation, so finely describing echoes, and so poetically accounting for their causes from popular superstition. Quae bene quum videas rationem redere possis, tute tibi atque alus, quo pacto per loca sola, saxa pareas formas verborum ex ordine redant, palanteas comites quum monteas inter opacos, quarimus et magna dispersos voce ciemus, sex etiam aut septem loca vidi redere voces, unum quam jaceres, ita coles colibus ipsis, verba repulsantes iterabant dicta referre, hac loca capripedes satyros nymphasque tenere, finitimi fingunt et faunos esse locuntur. Quorum noctivago strepitu ludoque jocanti, ad firmant volgo taciturna silentia rumpi. Cordarumque sonos fieri dulcesque querelas, tibia quos fundit digitis pulsata canentem, et genus agricolum late sentis scere, quam pan pinia semiferi capitis velamina quassans, unco sape labro calamos percurrit hianteus, fistula silvestrum necessit fundere musum. Lucretius, Book 4, 1, 576. Reader's note. When you understand this well, you might be able to give a reason to yourself and others how it happens that in lonely places the rocks give back the same formation of words in their order when we look for friends struggling among the shady mountain rocks, and call out loudly after them, scattered around. I have known places give back as many as 6 or 7 sounds, when only one has been uttered. Assorted hills echo one's words and repeatedly give back that which was spoken. Those living near imagine goat-footed satyrs and nymphs haunting these places. They say there are fauns by whose din and play at night they commonly declare silence and stillness to be broken. They say, too, how the sounds of strings are heard, and plaintive laments which the pipe pours forth when played on by the fingers of the music-maker. They tell how the farmers, far and wide, are aware when Pan, shaking the pine-wreathed covering of his half-bestial head, often runs over the open reeds with curving lips, that the shepherd's pipe may never cease its flow of woodland song. Translation Peter Yearsley. End note.